So this concept where you have a server maintaining your identity, this username is your identity. There's a central location where your identity is going to be managed. So this server and the clients together form a concept known as a domain. If you want to think about the domain concept, think about a country that is India. Think about India as a collection of states. So what do you have? You have states and you have the capital city, that is Delhi, together form a country called India. So in that same way, the servers and the server, central server and the client together, the clients who are all authenticating themselves to the server, this concept is known as the domain concept. And just like Delhi is a capital city and you give the designation of it being a capital city, isn't it? In that same way, this server is just not another server. It's been given a designation of a domain controller. It is known as a domain controller. If someone refers to the server, to differentiate it with other servers, you will call it a domain controller. You'll just not call it a server because a server can be anything. It could be a web server. It could be a DNS server. It could be a DHCP server. So how do you differentiate this server from all the other servers? You typically call it a domain controller. And also one last thing, in a Windows environment, if you want to um, configure a domain, you want to configure this environment, then on this server you need to install a component called ADDS, and it goes by the name of Active Directory Domain Services. So please understand our goal out here. Our goal out here is from a centralized location, managing all our users and computer settings, managing what our users can do and what settings our computers will have. And in order to do that, we'll be establishing a centralized server where all the identities are going to be managed, where all the identities are going to be stored and managed, to be very specific. So your identity is going to be on the server. Your computer's identity is going to be on the server. And the server is going to decide what's going to be done, what you can do on the client and what you cannot do on the client. Now, you already seen that on your corporate laptop. You are not able to change settings. You're not able to install softwares on a corporate laptop. Why are you not able to do that? Because the server decides it. And is there any user account for you on your laptop? No, it is there on a server. So if you were to check your user accounts list on your laptop, you will not see that because it's on the server. There'll be no name for you on your computer because your name is defined on the server. And the server is authenticating you. What is the meaning of authenticating? So you log in and you specify your username and you specify your password. That is known as authentication. If you specify the wrong password, it'll say password is wrong. Who's validating this? The centralized server is validating you so that it knows that, are you the right person to access this resource or no? Okay. Is this clear now?
Yes, sir.
We are going to configure the domain. And in order to configure the domain, we need to install a component called, what is that component? What component do I need to install? Oh, yes,
ADDS.
exactly. Tarun Kumar put it in the chat, ADDS, right? Okay, fine. Right, okay. So I'm going to go into Server Manager. Server Manager, right? Now, as I told you, Server Manager is going to be a central pane of configuring everything for the server. Typically, most of the things can be done from Server Manager itself. So, right on the screen, you see something known as add roles and features. So, you want to give more capability to the server. What are you going to do? You are going to give it more roles and features, isn't it? So, I'm going to click on this option called add roles and features.
Okay.
And I will click on next. What are we doing? Are we installing a role-based or feature-based installation? Now, please understand, ignore what you don't know. The second option, remote desktop services installation, we have not discussed also. We don't know what it is. But we know that we are going to be installing the ADDS role. Hence, I will click on next to that. Okay. And London SVR1 is the server that we are working with. Yeah, that's the server we are working with. It's confirming. Is this the server where you want to make the changes? Yes, I want to make it on the server itself. And I will click on next. And now we come to the roles page. So on the roles page, should I select the first one or the second one?
The domain
Oh yes,
services.
okay, Active Directory Domain. I have seen some students doing that, yeah. They will select the first one and go ahead and say, sir, nothing happened. All right. So I will select the second one. And the moment I select that, it says, hey, there are more components that I need to install. You say, yes, go ahead. Because right now I don't know what these components are, but what you want to do, you do. Right. So I click on add feature. So it is saying there are more features behind this. I need to install them. And we say, yes, please go ahead and install those features. Whatever you want, please install it. But I'm concerned with Active Directory Domain Services, which is a role. And if I click on next, there's a whole list of features. In fact, one of the features that it automatically took is group policy management. It's saying that, oh, if you're installing ADDS, then group policy management will come free, 1+1 free. We all like that, right? When I go to the mall, I look for that 1+1 free thing, right? Okay. So, and I get fooled by it. When I come home and calculate it, it's actually one only, not 1+1. Okay. So anyway, so group policy management is going to come with it. I'll talk about group policy management a little bit later on, right? But please understand, Active Directory Domain Services is going to be installed, and along with that, something else is also going to be installed called group policy management. Good. Click on next. Click on next. And click on install. So what did I do? Next, next, install. I hope people are making a note of everything. So please understand, in this whole game plan, I just made one tick mark for Active Directory Domain Services. Next, 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 install. So ADDS is installed. I will click on close to this. But wait a minute. The moment I click on close, I see a flag, and under the flag, I see a
Yes.
notification. And what this notification tells you, that additional configuration needs to be done. You still need to do some additional configuration, right? And if you notice, there's a link which says promote the server to a domain controller. I hope it makes sense what I was telling you about. That if you have a server which is hosting the domain or which is having ADDS, it is not called a normal server. It is called a domain controller. So that's what you're doing. You're promoting this server to a domain controller. And let's do that. So I'm going to click on this, promote the server to a domain controller. All right. So Priyanka, what should I choose from here? From the three options, I see three options over here. Add a domain controller to an existing domain, new domain to an existing forest, new forest. What do you think should I choose? I know you're seeing it for the first
I
time.
think,
Yeah.
yeah, I think I'll go with the first one. Like we will add a domain controller to the existing domain, or else we can go with the second one too. It's a new domain to an existing forest. I don't know what is forest means here.
Exactly, exactly. You
So,
don't know what is the meaning of
I
forest,
think,
right? But if you see,
so.
a forest is a collection of trees. That is the definition of a forest, right? Yes, same definition applies here, but please understand, you're at the basic level of Active Directory, so we are not going to discuss the forest concept, right? It will go above your head at
Mhm.
this moment. And let me tell you, the first two options we are not going to use because we don't have anything existing. It's completely new.
Yes,
So
yes.
that is why you're going to select the option, add a new forest. But right now, please ignore the forest option. Please focus on the fact that you are setting up a new domain.
Okay.
Priyanka.local, for example. Right. Okay.
Okay.
Right. Right. There has to be an extension. .com, .edu, whatever. Some extension has to be there. But please understand, why did I give the name .local and not .com? So that you don't confuse it with websites. We are not building a
Mhm.
website here. Please get this very, very clear. This has got nothing to do with the websites. If I'm saying domain, it's not a web domain. It's an active directory domain, right? Okay, so we click on next to this. Certain options we will ignore, certain options we will learn. As I said, since you're starting up, so the option that you're going to ignore right now is forest functional level, domain functional level. Ignore it. Pretend it is not there. But there is an option called DNS. We need to attack DNS
Mhm.
right away. So let's see what DNS is all. DNS stands for
Okay.
Domain Naming System. All right. Now we know what is TCP/IP. We know what is TCP/IP. We know what is an IP address. Correct? An example of an IP address
Yeah.
is 192.168.0. All communication, all networking communication primarily happens with an IP address. Without IP address, two computers cannot communicate with each other, right?
Yes.
That is clear, right? Okay. But now tell me one thing.
Yep.
You're accessing the internet almost every day. You're accessing different websites. Do you access those websites with their names, or do you access them with the IP address? What do you do?
Name
Yeah,
with
name
name.
is easy for us to remember, isn't it?
Yeah.
IP addresses are not easy. Even phone numbers. How many phone numbers do you remember? You've got so many contacts in your mobile device, but how many phone numbers do you remember? Hardly two or three or something like that, right? So we
Yeah.
remember names easily, and that is why every resource on the internet is been given a name, like something like
Okay.
Cisco.com or IBM.com, whatever. Everyone is given a name, but network communications happen with IP address. The name is of no use to your computer. If you're typing on a computer www.google.com or cisco.com, it's of no use to your computer. Your computer is going to say, please give me the IP address. Then only I can connect. So there has to be someone to convert that name
Yeah.
to the
Into
corresponding
IP
IP address.
address.
And who is that someone? DNS. Always
Okay.
remember something. Wherever there is a name that has to be converted to an IP address, DNS will come to the picture. Do you see a name out here? Yes. You see a name by the name of Priyanka dot local, which is a domain name. Priyanka dot local is on a certain DC, which is having a name by the name of London SVR1. London SVR1 is having an IP address. Sorry, 172.16.0.15 probably is the IP address of London SVR1. So can we see, we can see there's a name of a domain and which is hosted on a certain server, and that server is having an IP address. So let's say if there's a client who's saying, I want to authenticate to Priyanka.local. If there's a client who's coming and saying, hey, I need to find out where is Priyanka.local, who's going to help that client to find that domain and help it authenticate to the domain? Hmm?
DNS.
Absolutely correct, right? So DNS is a very, very critical component of network infrastructure. And here it is saying, do you want to install the DNS server? We say, yes, we want to install the DNS server. Good. It's asking you for a certain password. Right now, ignore what the password is for. Just put in whatever password that you know, PA dollar W0RD, whatever password that you're currently using in your lab, please use that, right? And I will click on next to this. Ignore this option. As I said, certain options, since you're starting off at this moment, we'll ignore it because those options will be you'll be dealing with later. Click on next. It will tell you something about the domain NetBIOS name. It will automatically populate the name. Nothing to be changed out here. Just got to click on next. Our goal is to somehow set up the domain by ignoring certain options and learning certain options. And for learning certain options, we are going to learn these options that you're going to see on your screen now. Just wait a minute. Yes. You see something known as a database folder. You see something known as log folder. What is this database? What are we doing? We're installing a component called ADDS. Why are we doing that? So we can have everybody's identities. We can have all
Yeah.
the identities stored on this server, isn't it? So those identities will be
Yeah.
stored in a certain database.
Database.
Exactly, right? So the default path
Yes.
is C, Windows, ntds, and inside this there's going to be a file called ntds.dit. It's not shown there. Over there only this path is given, but inside this there's a file called ntds.dit, which actually has a database of all your identities and their passwords. So if you want to crack or hack the domain, this is what you need to hack. But anyways, I'm not here to make hackers out of y'all. I'm just telling you, right? Right. If there's the database, there's also going to be a log file. Log file is like your rough book. You remember in school or college, you had a rough book and a fair book.
Yes.
Rough book, teacher is talking, write fast, fast, fast. Go home and put it in the fair book. Database is the fair book. Log files are the rough book. Okay.
Okay.
Now, did I say something about policies? Somewhere I must have mentioned to you that the whole goal behind this exercise is that there's going to be a client on which there's going to be some user, and the user is going to be authenticating to the domain. And are we going to set some policies to block or
Yes.
deny what that person can do? So these policies are known as something known as group policies. These policies are known as group policies, which we are going to deal with at a later stage. Maybe there are something known as group policies which we are going to apply at a later stage. We're going to say, okay, this is marketing department, this is HR department, I'm going to set a policy in the HR to reduce all the salaries, but that's what they do all the time to me. SYSVOL folder. SYSVOL folder, please remember participants, SYSVOL folder contains something known as group policies. That's going to be a topic for the next class, but group policies are going to be stored here, right? So I hope we got a clear understanding. Database folder contains everybody's identities. Log files folder are like logs, uh, transaction logs. They're known as transaction logs also. Please find out more about this. And SYSVOL folder contains policies. I'm fine with these settings. I don't want to change these settings. Leave it default. Click on next. Everything is done. Click on next. Okay, now it's giving you a summary. Please understand, it's giving you a summary of all that you've chosen. You've told the domain name is going to be this. You've told that DNS server is going to be installed, whatever, everything. It's telling you that this is what you've chosen. Is this what you've chosen to do? You say yes, and then you click on next to this. And now it's verifying the prerequisites. And if it finds that everything is proper, IP address, everything, name, everything is proper, then it goes say, okay, fine. I'll allow you to install Active Directory. And here, all the prerequisite checks are successful. Ignore those warnings that you see over here and click on install. Done. Our Active Directory domain is getting installed.